I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I was gonna comment that we're our administrators, and I forgot they're off today.
Yeah, and you have to log in there. Then Lori, would you mind doing roll call?
So, Mrs. Alter,
Here,
Mrs. Petropoulos,
here,
Mrs. Lamel, absent, Mr. Dunkowski, absent, Mrs. Lebuzzett,
here,
Ms. Joy, absent, Mrs. Grow,
here.
All right, and we have three guests in the audience. We have Megan Nothnagel. We also have Jeff it's Slade, right? From RSM Auditing. He'll be doing a small presentation in just a minute. And we have, as you know, Corey Boaz from Studio GC. So thank you everyone for being here. With Tirza not here, we need a secretary pro temp. If we could get a nomination for that.
I nominate Joy.
I'll second.
Mrs. Lebuzzett,
I was all set to hand it over to Joanne again.
Mrs. Lebuzzett,
Aye.
Mrs. Grow,
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
and Mrs. Alter.
Aye.
All right, so our first order of business, Jeffrey Slade from RSM is going to talk about our audit. So I'm just going to turn this so that anyone watching from home can see you. And it's all yours, Jeff.
All right, well, thank you. Nice to meet everyone tonight. Yeah, so today we're just going to be going briefly over the result of this year's annual audit. Although the packet today does not contain the finalized version of the financial statements, all the numbers are firm. The only reason they're not considered finalized right now is there was adoption of a new auditing standard, which changed the language in our audit opinion. So there's just some quality control reviews going back and forth. But all the numbers are firm, and anything that changes from the draft that you are seeing today will only be wording changes here and there. All the numbers are firm and nothing's going to change from there. To get into the actual audit itself, to start off would be your ISB AFR score, and that came in at a 3.9, which is just right below 4.0. You received a score of recognition, which is the highest score issued by ISB. The only reason for it being a 3.9 instead of a 4.0 is just because of the outstanding debt that the district has on hand. But there's obviously no concern. It's the highest score that gets issued. When it comes to required communications from the auditor to the board, we just wanted to let you know that the audit itself was presented performed in accordance with government auditing standards. The planning phase of the audit took place between July and August of this summer. And then the final fieldwork phase took place between August and October of this year. The reason for the more prolonged audit was just we kind of shifted things around because we were having experienced delays and staffing issues in the previous 2 years. I believe last year's audit was issued in January of this year, where obviously we're moving it up all the way into, it'll be issued in the next few days before November 15th. Like I said, it's just gonna be any day now. Just waiting for more or less the thumbs up from our quality control reviewers. When it comes to audit adjustments, we did not have any audit adjustments or compliance findings. There was no significant accounting estimates. We do have a couple when it comes to reporting of amortization of that bond premiums or discounts and depreciation expense on your capital assets. Then this year, there was no significant changes to your accounting policies, no new standards adopted. There's no unusual transactions identified. When it comes to the audit opinion, we are issuing an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, an unmodified opinion on the single audit, and an unmodified opinion in terms of compliance as well. So those are all good things. Those are the best and clean. That just means that we are issuing a clean opinion and no issues with the district itself. This year, when it comes to just some general highlights of the financial statements, This year, your general fund balance increased by approximately $3.5 million, bringing your unrestricted fund balance to 27 million, which is actually greater than your annual spend, which is approximately $19 million out of the general fund, and your overall fund financial statements or governmental funds. Fund balance increased by, I believe it was about $1.3 million. So a real positive year for the district. And with that, I'm just turning it over to you for any questions.
Does anyone on the board have any
I
questions?
have one. I understand that we got dinged because of outstanding debt. But with our district's history, I mean, we just took out that bond, you know. I mean, other schools are much deeper in debt than we are, you know, and we've always been in the black. So why would we get dinged at all if we have this history of being so economically frugal?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't really consider it a ding per se. It's just a function of ISB's calculation of long-term and short-term debt. It, like I said, it's not really a ding. I mean, 4.0 is great, but I think one of the only ways to truly get that number is to pretty much have to know that. And I think this year where you got hit a little bit is I think there was a $805,000 principal payment. So the money that went towards paying down your debt is also what kind of brings the score down a little bit. It's nothing to be concerned about. The recognition score is the highest that is the issues. So I mean, they're pretty much looking for you to be in that 3.53 to 4.0 range. So I wouldn't consider it to be a knock against the district. I think, as you can see, all within the financials, especially with that unrestricted fund balance, everything is very positive here.
No, I understand that. I just don't, I think my brain is thinking like a teacher or a student. And it's like, taking points off for what I see is no reason.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
at the end.
and I'm not trying to be, you know.
No, and I understand. I mean, at the end of the day, the thing that I would pay most attention to is that unrestricted fund balance, especially within the general fund, because that's your unrestricted funds. You can use them and move them around however the district pleases. So that is kind of really the best picture of a healthy district is when that. I mean, when it comes to the government financial accounting authority or organization, they suggest having 2 months worth of fund balance on hand, where you guys are well over a year's worth. So that
Well
just
aware
paints
of
an
that.
overall
Right,
healthy
and we could
picture.
pay off that debt tomorrow if you want, you know.
For the not financial literate people in the room, the debt is what? The bond?
Yeah, your outstanding bonds, and I mean, carrying debt is also not necessarily a negative thing against the district because you're using that fund, you're bringing cash at a very low interest rate and paying it off over a long period of time. I mean, so when you issued those bonds, the ones that were last year, I mean, that interest rate is already significantly lower than what if you were to go to the market today. So you're inherently gaining on the market by issuing that debt in the previous year and increasing the cash that you have on hand now.
And I'm gonna add that for the last 2 years, we did receive the 4.0. And because I'm like you, Nancy, it's like, I want that 4.0.
I
But,
want to be dinged.
but the reason was our previous bond issuance, we were 2 payments away from paying off in full, which was significantly less than the $5 million in working cash bonds. So now it's going to take several years for that debt structure to decrease. And then if we don't issue any more debt, we could potentially be back to 4.0, but a 3.9 is good. And especially with that, the interest rate that we received, with PMA, the timing was incredible.
Which is
So
why
low
we
interest
did
rate.
what we did, you know, because of that interest rate.
Yeah, the timing was very fortunate.
Well, it seems like a wonderful score, so way to go.
I think we did well.
Thank you, Jeff.
Mhm.
Anybody else? All right, thank you, Jeff, and you're more than welcome to stay, but have a good evening. All right.
It's like
And
the
no,
game that you do.
no offense to the audit presentation, but I'm much more excited for this. This is Board Member Appreciation Month, and the Board Member Appreciation Day is November 15th. And so there is a resolution that I would like to read. I will read it quickly, not as quickly as I do going into closed session. But, so School Board Member Day, November 15th, 2022. Whereas school board members are elected to sit in trust for the diverse communities, and in that capacity are charged with meeting the community's expectations and aspirations for the public education of their children. And whereas school board members are entrusted with the guardianship and prudent expenditure of tax dollars, and they are responsible for maintaining and preserving the buildings, grounds, and other areas of the school district that the community has put in their trust. And whereas school board members are responsible for providing leadership that ensures a clear, shared vision of public education for their schools, that sets high standards for the education of all students, and requires the effective and efficient operation of their districts. And whereas school board members adopt public policy to give voice to that leadership and employ a superintendent to administer board policy, and are also responsible for the regular monitoring of the district's performance and compliance with state policy. And whereas school board members selflessly volunteer countless hours to public service with no compensation, and whereas school districts have faced challenges over the recent years, and the strong, dedicated leadership provided by the Chicago Ridge School District Board of Education has allowed student learning and success to continue. And whereas employers are supportive of their employees who serve as school board members, generously lending support and time, employers give their employees the opportunity to better serve the needs of the school districts and communities they represent through sometimes tremendous sacrifice to the employer. And whereas decisions made by school board members directly impact the quality of life and safety in their communities, placing them as the front line of local democracy. Therefore, be it resolved that we proclaim November 15th, 2022 as School Board Members Day as a way to honor those citizens who devote their time and energy for the successful education of our children and our future leaders. There's a lot of things that we get sent that are very wordy that I'm not always a fan of. I think this really captures the amount of time and what you guys put in. And just on behalf of our entire district, just wanted to thank you, especially for over the last couple of years. You guys have just been fantastically supportive of our students and our staff, and we thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
All right, now on to the approval of the consent agenda.
Okay. Let's see. 4.0. And it's result of payroll and other vouchers that we usually pay at this time. So we need a motion.
I'll make a motion. I'll second.
Mrs. Hudson,
Aye.
Mrs. Petracca,
Aye.
Ms. Joy,
Aye.
Mrs. Earl, and Mrs. Sullivan.
Aye. Back to you.
All right, I'm going to call this the CSBO meeting. I do have some important things, but Kathy's are a little bit lengthier and more discussion pieces, but a few things I wanted to touch base on. 5.1 school department reports. Hopefully you had a chance to look at some of the fun pictures. I had such a fun time for the Halloween parades. We had it my first year as superintendent, then there was nothing the next year. And then last year I was down in Springfield for it. So I was really excited to be able to see both lawn and centrals. And it's just the kids were having a great time, and the rain held off, which was always very appreciative. 5.2 enrollment report. We are down 4 students this month compared to last year or last month, and we are up 7 students from this time last year. So it's starting to level out a little bit. We're kept climbing, increasing, but it's starting to level off a little bit. 5.3 PTA report. We had our PTA meeting last week over at Ridge Central, and just a couple, it's a pretty busy time. Book fair will be up and running November 16th. Kids will also have a chance to go to the fair during that week as well. They also do their stocking event where kids can buy a raffle ticket for stockings, which have some fun toys and usually candy and stuff for the kids. They're also going to be running their food drive coming up, and I always appreciate Joanne sends me for the Amazon Smile the last quarter. They made $95.42 just for people signing up, and I think Joanne always says that probably all came from her. So, but that's all right. We've all got our stuff. 5.4 vacant positions and possible staffing needs. We continue to search for some of the same positions. I did get to interview someone for the health position starting in January over at Finley. She is graduating in December and just has to pass her content test. I think she took it this past Saturday, but she, assuming that she passes that, she has accepted that position. So we're excited. I also did another round. This is the second time this year that I've done the mock interviews with students from Trinity. It was a different class, and I know all of our administrators went to the job fair at Trinity. This is now, I think, our second year going, and I was told there's like 4 times as many schools there now. Like, I think other people are starting to realize that they need to do this, but it's nice that we're getting our name out there and sharing our new schedule, salary schedules, and those types of things. So,
Trinity's usually a good place to get.
yeah.
We've had off and on over the years, we've had quite a few from there.
Yeah. And then I can't believe it's time already, but parent teacher conferences are coming up. Next Wednesday will be in person from 4:30 to 7:30. And then we will have virtual conferences on Monday. And as I've shared before, this is kind of that weird transition year, trying to figure out, are more parents going to want in person versus Zoom? We will have a survey go out immediately after that Monday before Thanksgiving, kind of asking how conferences went and if they were able to get exactly the type of conference that they wanted. And that will hopefully help us prepare a little bit better for the future.
Teachers be on site or will they be at home?
The plan is for them to be on site. Yes, we still are having some internet concerns over at Lawn. A company came out Friday and shut down everything at 4 o'clock and reinstalled some software and stuff. So we're hopeful that that took care of it. But that's the only way they would not be here, is if we can't guarantee that the internet's working.
That's really nuts.
Yeah. So. The next one is our III conference 5.6. The board earlier this year appointed Mrs. Salzer to represent the district at the conference, with Mrs. Petropoulos as the alternate if needed. I believe Lori passed out the badges today. You should have all of that. I suggest you download the app if you haven't done that already. There is actually like way too much information on the app. It's actually a little overwhelming trying to figure out. So definitely want to make sure we all get the things we want to. So I'd like to start having that conversation soon about what people might want to go to, so that we don't miss anything. I don't think all 7 people need to go to the same thing, but it's always good if you can have like pairs, so you have 2 ears to hear something. And then Lori's going to continue to send very, very long emails for everyone. But I know we all appreciate getting that information because it helps a lot. So thank you. 5.7, the Illinois Assessment of Readiness, also known as the IAR test. We received our summative designations. I did send a letter out to the community, probably one of my longest letters ever, a couple weeks ago. We had two of our buildings, our 2 elementary buildings, received commendable designations. Finley Junior High did receive a targeted designation, which means we now get support from Illinois Empower. Jeff and Julie and I did a webinar yesterday from 2 to 3 that kind of explained the process. And really, this is a planning year where Jeff and Julie will bring together a team that will look at kind of how they can improve those scores. They're on it for the next 4 years. Every year comes with money. One year is like 15,000, and the next is 20, then 30. So there is some substantial resources behind it, and it's really targeting our special ed population at Finley, which scored low. So that's where we're looking to improve, and that's where that will be designed to fit with the money. So any questions on the designation?
Is it like a particular grade or just overall?
So it's just overall. They don't tell you like 6th, 7th, or 8th. It's just kind of an overall designation. If they will give us that information in the future, we hope we can see what all 3 are, but we don't know where that compares to the state. And we've had quite a bit of turnover. We have 2 new special ed teachers from last year to this year. And those were both first-year teachers who we don't have anymore. So there's some things that we definitely want to look at, but we also think some of that turnover could be a part of it. So 5.8, revision to student absence / truancy language in the student parent handbook. Illinois passed another school code law that said you have to really specify the interventions you are doing if someone is truant, like to the point where we have to write down that we will talk to the child and their family. Well, obviously we've been doing that for however many years, but now that has to be spelled out in the policy. So we updated that, assuming the board votes on that, then we will update it on the website. And that will have to be voted on and looked at every 2 years now. They passed that law that we need to look at it every time. And then 5.9 is our other. I just wanted to point out, this is the 7th year that they've had the annual Steve Smith Toy Drive that our district has always supported. In a couple days or weeks, I would assume we will have boxes at the district office in all the buildings. And you can drop off items until December 16th, and it gets sent to families in need. And I know our resource officer right now, Sean Sloan, is a big supporter of this. And so I'm excited for him to talk to the kids about it because they already love them. So to talk about helping others, I'm sure will be even better. The only thing they do ask that no stuffed animals be donated, but anything else. And I believe a flyer will be up in a couple days. So
New, not used, correct?
correct. Yes. New toys. Yes. Thank you.
Actually, Steve Smith is going to street on that.
Yeah, I know everything's been very local, so we definitely enjoyed
Yeah.
supporting that.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think you can do anything better than teaching kids how good it feels to give back, and that's exactly what this does. So Megan was the star of last board meeting and got to talk the whole time. This time we gave her a really small part, but I know she wants to give a quick update on professional development.
Yes, so 6.1, update on professional development. One of the things that we definitely want to share with the board and the community is that all of our professional development plan this year are leading towards common threads that align directly to the goals of the strategic plan. So we're constantly revisiting and making sure that the professional development that we're offering for all of the staff are we're always thinking of what those strategic goals are so that we can ensure that we're moving towards the success of those. So at the beginning of the year, the leadership team met with Sherry Murphy, who is an outside group, or she has a group that meets with us. She'll meet with us several times throughout the year and about goals and kind of team building with the administrative team. We also had the administrators meet with Steve Erdl, who is the gentleman who comes in and has been working with the district for several years about the guaranteed viable curriculum. And so his role with the administrators was to make sure that they are prepared to support that work moving forward. And so he will also be working with the administrators through that process to make sure that they can then go back into the building, support their teachers as well. In turn support the kids with that learning. They also met with Elaine Roberts, who is a familiar face to the district. And when we met with her back at the end of October, she is going to be working specifically on the instructional strategies and practices that, again, educating the administrators so that they can go back into the buildings and support that work throughout the building and with the teachers. So all of those things really align to the strategic plan goals. When it comes to the teachers, our elementary teachers have been spending all of their time in early dismissals and institute days learning about the new math resource that they have been implementing. We adopted at the beginning of this year, illustrative math. We are going to step aside from that really specific professional development in math to the elementary buildings and really focus on more math teaching and learning and get a pulse on what those teachers need in order to make sure that they're successful moving forward. In the junior high, they have been meeting with Jen Lieben, who is our tech coach, and Elaine Roberts, who is again a coach that has worked with us in the past, focusing on those instructional strategies and practices. What can they do in their classrooms to get the students engaged and beyond just content learning, but more of those skills that we want them to be able to do cross-curricular and outside of the building. And so they have been in early dismissal days meeting with those coaches and getting that information from them. They've also spent some time with learning about some online resources to help student learning as well. Our EL team has been meeting with Caroline Brucheri to make sure that the English learner department and program is strong and they're defining that and making sure kind of going back and maybe cleaning up some of that kind of transition that has taken place over the last couple of years, making sure that everybody's on the same page and there's cohesiveness with the program across the district. And then related service staff, paraprofessionals have really been doing a lot of training, professional development on what pertains to them in their position and how best they can support the students, whether it's a social worker, a school counselor, paraprofessional, speech pathologist. So we've really kind of honed in on making that professional development specific to them. And again, all of that work has been directly aligned to those goals in the strategic plan, and we constantly are revisiting that. And we do have a strong list of professional development needs and opportunities, and it's just helpful to have it all in one location so that we can kind of plug in where we have that time to ensure that it's getting done and that we're keeping that same professional development trend throughout the year and in the future, of course. Any questions?
I would just like to point out one thing, when we talk about the need for the curriculum director, we've now had math coaches for multiple years. We got this resource, Illustrative Math, and anytime you get a resource, they come out and do professional development. They definitely have like their goals as coming out to teach you their resource. What I was really appreciative of this when Megan said we're kind of switching the focus, we still, I think, had at least 2 more PD days with them. And our math coaches were talking with the teachers, and not surprising when you have a new resource, you feel overwhelmed. But they talked to them and they said, we just want our questions answered. We don't need to hear about the resource. So the math coaches came and talked to Megan about it. And so they made the decision that that's the route we were going to go. I happen to be at Lawn's 7:15 morning leadership meeting when Jen Talby, the math coach, shared that with them. You would have liked to see the weight lifted off their shoulders as teachers. And that's what we want to do. We know where we need to go, and we have to talk to each other and figure out the best way to support each other. And I was really happy to see that happen in this situation. So hopefully we'll continue to see more of that.
Yeah, and we do have a group that meets district math leadership team, and they've been meeting for years. And they have been building their capacity on best practices in math teaching and learning. But the biggest hiccup or concern that they've had is, how do we get it from this, what we call the DMLT, the district math leadership team, to the teachers? And we kept getting these roadblocks of there's no time, there's not an opportunity. So we are going to use now what was designated, because we already slotted those 2 early dismissal days for the elementary in January and February for IM. Now we're going to just change that. And now the DMLT, the district math leadership team, is going to be able to plan based on where they know we're at. Their teachers in the building, they've been working in this group for years, saying what needs to be done in order to make those math classrooms, most successful. So they'll be leading that. The teachers themselves will be leading that professional development in both of those opportunities.
Well, I feel really very glad that you're like above them, coordinating all this stuff with them, because that is what's gonna make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Because like you said, they were doing their job, and then they were stuck. Where do we go from here? But now you can balance that off.
Yeah.
And I think that's really gonna get us a step forward that we've been looking for the last few years.
Hopefully get a chance to hear the teachers and make a change.
And then see the difference with the kids, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the end result, so thank you for doing what you're doing. Lynn.
And just my 6.2 is happy school board member day, my other.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Kathy, you ready?
I throw my other happy.
Look bad here.
I'm gonna mute myself. You go
Please.
yours.
Okay, so what we're really going to do today is have a discussion on the building additions and renovation projects. This is ideally a discussion that we would be having in a study session, but because of the timing of the bids and the importance of getting this process rolling, compounded with no study session in November, in December, we're going to have it now. So this goes back to our planning that literally started a couple of years ago with some renovations at Ridge Central. And it kind of evolved from there. So we had given Studio GC authorization to put our specifications out for bid. And October 28th, we opened the bids right here in the district office. And just to kind of refresh your memory, the way it was posed to the public was base bid 1 was to incorporate the infill in the courtyard at Ridge Lawn. So if you remember, their building is kind of square and they have that big empty space in the middle that prior to the pre-K playground, the kids would go in there with some plastic furniture and have a wall. Well, now we're looking to utilize that space and make 4 additional classrooms, some small space areas, some common area. So that was base 1. Base 2 bid encompassed work at Ridge Central and Finley. The work we've been talking about for several years at Ridge Central is, and I'm going to read this because I don't want to miss anything, the front office space. For years, we've been talking about how it needs to be reconfigured for workflow purposes, but also for security. So that was the main focus of that, along with a lot of additional spaces in that first corridor for itinerant services. In addition, a small classroom and a library. We're looking to convert the teacher's lounge into a classroom, and then the conference room and the teacher's lounge are going to be relocated. So that is basically the scope of Ridge Central that's in base bid 2. The other piece of it is expansion of 4 classrooms right over here at Finley. And when we started talking about this, we're talking about Ridge Lawn and Ridge Central and getting work done. So we had asked our architects, what could we do for Finley? Let's price it out and see. So we threw in there the expansion of those 4 classrooms with eventually an additional 2 classrooms being put out there. Okay, so those bids were opened last week, and we actually had 3 bidders of record. But since then, one of the bidders has rescinded their base bid 1 because apparently they failed to include a large bit of scope. And in speaking with Corey, because my first thought was, how can they do that? They put out a bid. But it sounds like if you held them to that dollar amount, you'd be kind of compromising some services because they would be looking to make up that shortfall. So we accepted their withdrawal bids. So what that means is Construction Solutions now was the low bidder for base bid 1 and base bid 2. Now, to complicate things even a little bit more, what we did is we threw in some alternate bids. And a lot of the alternate bids were already included in the base bid. So what that means, I know it's confusing. So bathroom renovations, let's say, bathroom renovations was on our capital planning list to do. Okay, what Studio GC said is, let's throw it into our base bid. Let's try to get some economies of scale. These people are in our building. Let's try to make it work. So in the base bid is the restroom renovations. We have the authority to take that out. If we didn't want $280,000 worth of restroom repairs, we could just say no. We got our number. So does anybody have any questions on that? I'm seeing we're good. Okay. And so though there's a couple items like that, in addition to the intercom systems, we know we have to do the intercom systems. We would have hoped to be able to do them by now. That was included in the base bid. Okay. Now going through all of those alternatives, it makes sense to do the washrooms. It makes sense to do the intercoms, and it also makes sense to add, this is an add to the base bid, the garage at Central. We've been talking about that again for a long time. And we met again with Katie and Emily just to talk about the space over there. And Megan obviously knows the history. She was in the meeting as well. And basically right now, they can't accommodate another classroom. If one of their classrooms or grade levels had a couple extra kids, they really wouldn't know what to do with them. So they really made a good argument for adding that to the scope of this bid. And now another piece of that, what we would eventually have to look at is if Wes loses his garage, where do we put all that stuff? And of course,
Aren't they getting another classroom though, if they take the teacher's lounge
yeah,
and move it to where the front office space is?
yes.
Okay.
In we did, because again, Megan, if you want to chime in here, please. We did the reconfiguration and you're absolutely right. They're getting that classroom. But they could use this one. I believe they said, there's a special ed classroom being utilized now that should be separated, but in that classroom, there's two grade levels. And those kids really should be spread out.
We've been talking.
We really have. So the cost of the total projects, leaving our add-ins, if you will, along with the garage, is $7.5 million. When we estimated what it would be just a few short months ago, it was 6.4 million. So we are roughly 1.1 higher than we were. And basically you could guess, rising labor costs, material costs, contractor supply and demand. I have to believe that school districts have to spend this ESSER money, and there's only so many contractors go around. And we're looking to get this work done in 8 short weeks. Time is not our friend. And then again, we are throwing in the restrooms and intercom. And then minor, when we did our facility refresh projects over the summer, Studio GC held off on some asphalt work and some flooring, especially over at Ridge Central, because we knew we were going to be tearing up that anyways. So that is an additional cost. So the big question is, how do we pay for this? Okay, we looked at our ESSER 3 grant, and right off the bat, we can budget 4.2 with a little bit of maneuvering. We originally had 3.6 million budgeted in there. We took a closer look and we believe we could get around 4.2 million out of that grant, which will eventually disappear. If we don't use it, quite honestly, we will lose it. And then just some minor things I wanted to share with the board. We always built in a couple $100,000 for O&M contingency. Studio GC has already looked at our facility refresh project for this summer. And on the list was doors and maintenance. The doors are hopefully going to come in about $200,000 lower than anticipated. Because of the quantity, they took a real good look, a closer look now 4 years later at what needs to be replaced. And then also the windows. They don't feel the windows need to be done at this time. Keep in mind, it still might in 5 years, but we can't project that far out. So we looked at our financials and our operating accounts, which is all of our accounts that we can use for general purposes. And we do have adequate funds. We do have funds to support this project. But the discussion I really wanted to put out to the board is when we looked at the components of this project, we estimated about $1.3 million to be the expansion of 4 classrooms at Finley. And even though we have the money, the question and conversation for the board is that a good use of our funds? Over at Ridge Lawn, granted, that's almost costing $4 million, but we're getting a courtyard, we're getting 4 brand new classrooms. Here we're expanding classrooms for $1.3 million. And we really wanted to get the board's feedback on, do we do that now? Or do we combine that in another year with our 2 brand new classrooms. And what is not in here is the cost of 2 new classrooms. That was an alternative that we would have had to add at about $500,000. So 4 larger classrooms plus 2 brand new would be rough and real rough, because these are our estimates, not the contractor's estimates, is about $2 million. So the question is that a good use of our funds in terms of spending that kind of money for larger? And I just want to add, before we have our discussion, is there was a definite need at the other 2 schools. New classrooms, itinerant spaces. This was more of a, let's see what we could do for Findlay. And I'd like to know if it's worth it.
Where else? Sorry, did you have your hand up?
Go ahead.
Where else were you thinking that money for ESSER could go? Is there a higher level of need to spend that money somewhere before we lose it?
Not really, because such quantity, I mean, you're talking $4 million. We don't have enough teachers. We don't have enough resources. We can't purchase that much curriculum and educational materials to get through that money. And now keep in mind, though, also ESSER 3 has a component that at a minimum 20% has to go to learning loss. So there is still resources in there for curriculum, for our special ed salaries, educational materials. And then in addition, there's summer school in there and after school activities. So it's a great question. I don't want you to think, though, we're taking every dime, because the ESSER 3 fund is actually 6.9 million. And if we had another way of spending it, we could certainly entertain it, but I really don't think there is.
So I just want to recap. What I'm hearing you say is that there is the money in the ESSER funds. It's not already targeted for another program. And we'll potentially lose that money if we don't spend it.
Yes, and let me just restate it a little bit. The total project is 7.5 million. 4.2 can very likely come out of ESSER. So the bigger question, and yes, if we do not use it on this, we will lose it. Now, granted, we could just say we want to do Ridge Lawn. Ridge Lawn is 3.9, here's 4.2. We could just end it there. But the question is, after we use the 4.2 ESSER money, where does that 3.3 come from? And that's where it can come from, several different pockets of money, being fund balances as well. Does that answer your question? Joanna?
As far as Finley for add-ons, more space, I just kind of calculated really quickly. Moving in next year, we'll have 126, roughly 126 students going into 6th grade between Lawn and Central. Right now, Finley 6th grade is 118, it's 8 more kids. But I mean, don't we need room, more classroom for the incoming and future students? I mean, the numbers of kids just go up each year. Going
What
down.
did the junior high teachers say, if I can ask, because we can say we don't need the space, but
Yeah,
none of us work in that
and I
building.
think we
so-
would love the space, but they're making it work now. You're talking 4 rooms that would get larger. If they were 4 additional classrooms, I would say do that right now. And when you say 8 additional students, keep in mind that will be spaced out amongst 6, 7, 8 teachers. So you're talking 1 or 2 more kids in a class.
And then we're not going over class size limits.
No, we'll be okay with that. It's just this section over here, those classrooms are really tiny. They are some of the smallest classrooms I think I've ever seen. Yes, so this is something I definitely think we want to do. It's just whether or not it makes sense to do it this school year for the following year when we can combine it and hopefully save some of that money. And expand on 4 rooms and then add 2 new classrooms. As Kathy said, we have the money, like, we can find that money if that's something we want to do. We just don't know if it's the best way to use it at this time.
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
So essentially, if we just did it now, it would just bump out the rooms, but if we waited, then it would bump them out and give us 2 new classrooms,
We
is what
would-
we're saying?
We would add that as part of the project also
Okay.
then, so it, like Kathy said, roughly it'd be about 2 million. Who knows what the cost would be next year,
And-
though.
The project now is 1 million more, basically,
The project for.
if we kept that still.
Yes, if we kept based on our estimate, the expansion of 4 classrooms is roughly, and I say roughly because this is our numbers, 1.3 million. If we, I'm just gonna throw this out there too, if we wanted to add those other 2 classrooms, that was an alternate bid. And we could add that, it's not included in the 7.5. Now I'm going the other way, but just to show you, we could add that. And then for the 2 million roughly, we could get 4 bigger classrooms and 2 brand new classrooms.
So, but the amount of money that it's, sorry if I interrupt someone, that it's gonna cost us, isn't a lot of it being pulled away, so it's really not costing us a ton more if we've got this extra 200,000 from the doors, as well as the possible 600,000, so we're really only talking about $100,000 as opposed to 1 million.
And you're exactly right. I just wanted,
I'm not a
yeah,
numbers gal. but
I just
trying to follow that.
wanted to point out, there are little places we could get money.
Okay,
And so I appreciate your comment, because we don't need to go into fund balances 3.3 million. What that's going to be at the end of the school year is going to be significantly different, but we don't know what that is yet.
And would it be in our favor to move forward with the extra classrooms? Because in a year from now, could construction costs
go up.
get worse? I mean, is this what the projection is that we're not at the peak of it? Aren't we just kind of still kind of headed upwards in terms of costs and labor and supplies?
Yes, go
So I
ahead.
was gonna answer the
Correct.
same thing.
Projections are still minimum 7 to 8%.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like we're not even near coming back down from it.
We have not plateaued. The expectation for a plateau is 2.5, 3 years.
So wouldn't it
Behoove us to
Be-
do it now.
be in our best interest financially to rip the Band-Aid off and do it now? Instead of waiting until next year, and then this possible $500,000 project is now costing $750,000 or
Plus, I think if
$800,000.
you're opening it up, you might as well do it all and add the other 2, but that's just,
And that alternate bid is in there, yeah.
sorry, Bailey.
It-
I can't. tell you before.
And just before, in the 7.5, the alternate bid is not in there. Corey, is if you, it's between 500,000 and 600,000, could you pull that number? Thank you. Okay, and Bailey, in the,
I was just gonna ask about the time frame. So if we do add the 2 classrooms while we expand the 4, does that change the 8-week projection significantly?
and Corey, can you speak to that? It should still be the same.
It is not truly an 8-week, it's an 8-week for the renovation portion. The addition portion will start before school actually gets out. It does not change that time.
Okay.
And a couple of those rooms that exist now, like 410, I think it was my old room. I mean, it's doable, but it was always tight in there.
How does that affect zoning though, too?
Well,
Being tight, yeah, it impacts your
you know,
ability
you
to.
can't get moved around a lot
Yeah.
or anything. There was really,
I don't know, Adeline.
there was just enough.
I think if we I think it's gotta be an all or nothing.
Yeah.
I do not like the idea of bumping out the 4 rooms.
I-
I do not think, yes, it gives you space, but I just don't think it's a wise use of money. If you can completely change that space and give 4 good sized room and 2 other ones, again, we do have the money, and it is just gonna keep going up. So
Yeah.
it's gotta be, to me, an all or nothing.
And at some point, the state's gonna start coming after us with our. They're probably gonna think we have too much money in the loans.
Okay.
Does Does that happen?
There has been talk probably the last 6 or 7 years that they want you to have a certain balance. But if you go too high, they're gonna just say you have too much money and take it back.
That's what we pulled out before, right? That's what we used some.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm just the school of thought, it's like, if it's all gonna go higher and technically it's not vastly that much different if you're able to pull the funds from
Mhm.
possibly other places, than if we do the other 2 rooms, then we're talking $600,000 and then we get 2 more rooms as opposed to 1 million or 15.
For large.
Sorry, 1,500,000. Math's not my thing.
In millions, spending millions, I mean, thousands. Seem like a.
A drop in the bucket, right?
Couple
Well,
dollars.
And I think when we talk in the, not just this board, but we go back many, many years about being fiscally responsible, this is why you are fiscally responsible. So when you see a need of adding space, it's not, oh my gosh, we're never gonna be able to survive this money. Now, you can't make these decisions all the time, but there are times where you pull the trigger and say, yes, this is needed for our kids and our students.
Is it possible that we could see the diagram one more time with all 4? Sorry to make this more complicated. I
No,
was like,
this
I'd
is
like
a
to
good
actually walk
discussion.
over there, but we're not going on a field trip. I just, I'll look at the picture.
Kathy, how do you feel about this?
I'm mixed.
I
I'm
mean, it
mixed.
seemed like you guys were leaning towards no, but no,
Um,
yeah, I just don't know.
And I am, I frugal to a fault.
Yeah.
Because I know how hard this district has saved their money. But I'm not the one to, to say, is this the best use of our funds? I hear $1.3 million for making rooms larger and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's ridiculous.
We're
You know,
talking about
but-
outside structure
Right,
too.
exactly. You're knocking down walls, but to hear it from an architect to say it's reasonable. And then when you throw in the 2 additional rooms, and Corey, did you get that number? Okay, so
That's 100.
856. So there you're getting a brand new classroom for $300,000. That kind of seems reasonable. But when I look at just that expansion of the 1.3, I think that's hard to deal with.
But there's nowhere else to go though, right?
There's.
It's not like there's another option where we could go in. You can't make it bigger inside, so it has to be the outside wall.
And I think it was a struggle for Studio GC to come up with something we could do at Finley because we're so landlocked.
Yeah.
Mm. And Bailey, yeah.
I forgot what the diagram looks like, if I'm being honest. Is there any way to do the 2 rooms without expanding the 4? I honestly forgot where any of them were.
Technically, yes. So up on the screen, we do have the layout in the back.
I'm just good.
So in, I'm gonna show, so this is the southeast corner. This kind of solid line right here, that is the exterior of the wall. So we'd be bumping out these 2 classrooms, to make them larger. Same thing on the north side, bumping out these 2 classrooms, to make them larger. The $615,000 that gets you these 2 classrooms right here. So we did not separate the bids to do just these without any additional expansion. Since we put all the emphasis on doing the expansion first, since it is already off the corridor, and it's, for lack of a better term, cheaper money, as opposed to doing more corridor first and then expand and then 2 classrooms. So the opportunity is there.
Because
yes.
the vestibule opening is not in just the 2 rooms. Is that what you're trying?
Correct, the vestibule
Thank
opening is within.
So
the-
it would go up then, because we would have to add new vestibules. So, all right.
Correct.
It'd be almost senseless to add those rooms without doing that compound.
From a financial standpoint.
Well, that too, but even look at the way the plans are, I mean, it would really. To use that word again, it behooves us to go ahead and do it.
English teacher. Not throwing those big money words when I can.
Yeah, I mean, I could just vision it, I mean, it would be so good. With those back rooms, they'd have windows, those rooms that are being bumped out.
Yes, they would have So this room has its window on the south now. It doesn't have a window on the east. I think this one does have one.
Or 10 has one, but they're the high, small
Yeah.
ones.
So more or less, we're basically taking this wall and
Moving it out.
making it about 17 feet.
Do they still have like high windows or?
Have the same exact layout.
I'm not an architect, so it might be a stupid question, but is there a particular reason that it's not like a straight line?
Yeah.
Like why those classrooms couldn't be bumped out even further?
And that's good.
Access into the courtyard.
We'll try that.
Oh, the truck, right? The truck,
Yeah,
you
we
know.
got the
Okay,
Dumpsters and yeah.
Yeah.
what's the-
yeah.
That's a good
Then
question.
they can go around.
Yeah.
Yeah. That does make sense.
And again, as I said, in my part, it's gotta be all or nothing. Another vote for all would be we're doing stuff at 2 other buildings. And now, and you're either not doing anything, or you're doing something very nice at the junior high. So to be able to do something for all 3 buildings is not a chance that comes up very often.
Well, and like I said, the extra money is gonna be gone.
Mhm.
And we have used it by when here.
I believe it has to be committed by September of 24.
Okay, so would we use up the last of the extra, or there would still be some left?
We would use every dime.
The other stuff is already yours. Megan
Yeah.
spends money like crazy for curriculum and programs.
Spend $1 million.
But that's because we're mandated to use part of that money for
Of
just
course.
that.
So can I just put something out there? The two of you. You're saying that no matter what, this 4 and 2 is eventually gonna happen, for sure.
We think it needs to.
So then if it's eventually gonna happen and we know it's gonna be more costly, I mean. I think that the answer is obvious, so.
I agree.
I mean, if we're gonna do it no matter what, and like, oh, it's just gonna cost us more later. I mean, if we're concerned that we're gonna need this money for something else, then that would be something I'd wanna
Mhm.
hear. If there was some level of like, oh, we really don't wanna put it out there, but if we're gonna do it eventually anyway. I don't know.
We have been doing this big stuff,
Mhm.
you know, and thank God for that extra money. We've been
Right.
able to do these things. I
And
think
what,
it puts us ahead of the game then, you know? And
what
we'll
would this
probably-
do to our strategic planning process? Would this be checking so many things?
Yeah, I mean, when you, yes, I mean, there's a lot of things that it.
Our 5-year goal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think this would be much more valuable to student learning.
Okay, I have one more question. Is it also cost effective just to do it now? Because the same construction companies literally have all the equipment right here currently.
Mhm.
Like, does it make a difference even if the same
I think
company
that's how we
did it
did the roof
a
the
year
way we did.
later, it'd be bringing all the same supplies back out?
Yeah. And we were warned of it last year, you know. That cost, like, with everything that was going on significantly up, so we wait anymore.
And I would ju-
Yeah.
And I would just
yeah, that-
think that since the base bid was one number and a lot of their administrative costs and things like that are in there, I would have to think that the alternate would be a very fair price.
Well, do your magic.
There's nothing, I mean,
That's a
yeah,
bid.
we can't change the bid. Maybe we don't buy as many pencils this year, but,
So Kathy, when we go to make the motion, we need to add the alternative.
yes.
If you have all the information.
So Corey, I'm gonna ask you one more time to read me the alternate bid to add the 2 classrooms, 615. Okay,
While Corey's doing that, I just want to confirm, so in base bid 1, this is also including already the bathrooms and the intercoms.
yes, it is.
Also for base bid 2.
Yes, it is.
So the only you could, because did you mention more than one
There-
more
there-
than one alternative?
Yeah,
bid?
there are several. There are there really were, but I just kind of highlighted what is included. What we're not going, there was a couple that we were not going to do at the tune of $24,000, and this would have been an ad. No, I'm saying that wrong, Corey. This would have been a deduct. They wanted $24,000 to redo the front office at Finley, just the desk.
Just for that.
So we took that out. I'm trying. We added like $6,000 or $7,000. We have two doors over at Finley that open up to each other. Very immaterial, but it's kind of a code issue we have to do, so we added that. I just really highlighted the large items.
Yes, it is $615,856.
Okay. Because if we're in agreement, then we'll do the math and we will add that to base bid 2.
That'd be-
I will do the math.
That was 615.
615, 856.
Okay, I'll do that while you're doing your levy.
And just to confirm, Kathy, that we are not putting ourselves in any type of jeopardy by doing this.
No, I feel very confident we can do this. That being said, this will eventually dip into fund balances. There are architect fees that go with it. Obviously, we pay those as we go. There's furnishing costs. But even when you factor that in, financially, we will be okay. When we think furnishings though, if we would want these rooms all ready for August, when kids come back, that's probably a discussion we're gonna start having a lot sooner than later.
A lot of chairs in here.
Right.
Can I ask one more question?
Please.
I'm still with what I feel. What are we gonna do with the stuff from the garage? Cause that was never talked
Yeah.
about. So
Yeah, so I have, there,
that was like added on. Well, I mean, tonight though,
Yeah.
just a refresher.
so a big piece of the pie here is, the garage, because I don't know how many square feet of good stuff, junk, and necessities there are. So our strategy for that is, one, to declutter. To get Wes to go through, if I'm guessing if he has one ceiling tile, he has hundreds and hundreds. I'm not saying get rid of the good ones, but if there's something bad, we have to declutter. I do know, some teachers that have stuff over there. That's gotta go. And then that gets us down to a reasonable amount of storage. So what we've been looking into and kind of hearing what's kind of, reasonable are those trailers. And I know we just had a discussion not too long ago, a trailer, right now, we don't know how big, because we don't know how much stuff is gonna be left after that garage is cleaned out. And you put it at the side of a building. Someone had mentioned you can paint murals,
Yeah,
you could
actually,
spray
I
paint
I
them.
was driving
Couple
back
years ago, we talked
Oak Lawn today, down 111, Oak Lawn Park District has one out there, it's painted with their logo.
Mhm,
That would be really fun for like the art club to do.
it would be. It
What
would
about,
be.
does he have a snowplow in there? or a truck?
Well,
That's
the
one
biggest,
thing I was worried
yeah,
about.
the biggest issue is his truck. Because the truck itself can sit out, but 8 months out of the year when he's not using the plow, that needs to go somewhere. So we would have to look at the logistics on where the safest place to park that would be. So that is definitely another piece of it.
And the longer term is still looking for a storage shed, space over Everett's
Mm.
lawn.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
what I was just gonna.
Mm.
So with
that
the
would
cement
make
plant
sense.
For the cement foundation, build a very large structure for him. Obviously, we'll still need some space over here for those things like the snowplow equipment that needs to stay here. But a lot of that other stuff. can move
Yeah,
there.
once they build the garage or whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
The big stuff will go over there.
Thank
Okay,
you.
any other questions on that? Okay, Corey, you are welcome to stay for the levy presentation if you'd like.
But,
Yeah,
my mother is, the board member.
And just,
Thank
and
you.
just for the record, Corey and I did not wear khakis and red to match. It just, it was a little coincidence, but, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for
thank
being
you,
here,
Corey.
Corey.
For indulging
I
us.
am, yes. Okay. And Dr. Thorne's
Hi, Corey.
You haven't had enough finance already, right?
That damn necessity one.
It's thank you, Nancy, it really is, it is a necessity. I only get to use my pointer once a year, so I really.
Very quick.
Okay. Okay, so today we're going,
It's their speaker.
Yeah, it's not.
Keep talking so you can figure out where it's coming from.
Next year. That's questionable. It's a good age.
oh, it is, you're right, but yeah. Check for. Okay, so tonight we're gonna talk about the 2022 property tax levy. Many of you have sat through this a number of times, so I'll try to make it as exciting as possible. Nobody gets property tax levy, so we'll see. Okay, we always like to go over the key terms because this is a group you only talk about once a year. The tax levy is what we ask for. It doesn't necessarily mean what the county is going to extend to us. That would be the extension. That is going to be the money received from the property taxes. So when we talk about balloon levy, we can ask for the world, but we're only going to get our legal amount of extension. PTEL is basically the property tax extension limiting law. Basically says we cannot, as a school district, levy more than the lesser of CPI or 5%. This year, the lesser is actually 5% because CPI for 2021, it goes by the prior year, was 7.5. And the tax rate ceiling, there are a couple of funds within our structure that has maximum tax rates. And so we always have to keep an eye on the ceiling because if we levy too much in one account and our EAV dives and takes a hit, we might be leaving some money on the table. And then the other two key terms are CPI. That's our inflationary factor. I think we've all been hit by that. You go to the store, you fill your tank up with gas, everything costs more money, and that's measured by the CPI. And then finally, our EAV is our equalized assessed value, which is basically our values of our home. Now, not to be confused with what your market value is. If you go and sell your house, you might get 200,000, but in terms of EAV, they do this and they multiply it by that. That might only be 50 or 60,000. So there is a difference. So when we talk EAV, it is not what your house is worth today. It's just a different variable. Okay, so I have this chart up here that historically shows the lesser CPI of or 5%. And so here you can see, it doesn't show. Look at that. No, a lot of it, you really have to look at the numbers. So this one's easy. In 2021, we're going to be asking the board to levy 5%. Now, as you can see, historically, 5% well exceeds the average. The 10-year average is 1.95%. So in those prior years, we have been asking a levy of significantly less than 5%. If we weren't a PTEL, if we weren't tax cap, then we would be asking the board to approve a 7.5%, but we cannot legally do that because we are capped. And then this gives you even a better history. This is a 30-year history. Back from 1994 and prior to this year, our highest was 4% and change back in 2009. So what this means is for the first 10-year period, 1994 to 2003, the average CPI was 2.52%. The second group of 10 years was 2.49. So we have consistently levied anywhere in the range, you know, from 2.5 to as low as I think it was 0.4 in 2010. And this really gives you a picture of the outlier of the 5%. Okay, couple new acts this year that I wanted to bring to the attention of the board. Public Act 102-519, we actually talked about in January. And what this does is this allows taxing body to recapture losses of refunds. So if your neighbor files a claim and says they want to be reevaluated and reassessed, and their property is brought lower, those funds go out to the taxpayers because that money has to be made up. And so when we collect money, we're collecting less. And so for this year, and this is brand new this year, we received an extra $105,000 from the county. It's not part of our levy. And back in January, when this act came out, we had a discussion with the board to say, do we want to give this back? Because we could always abate our taxes, and the conversation was, well, no. This is money that we are legally entitled to collect. So it was the board's philosophy, that's our money, we're entitled to it. And so now it actually showed up on our levy 11 months later. Does anybody have any questions on that one? I know it's been a long time since we talked about that. Basically, the county is giving us money back that we did not collect. In its simplest forms, that's what it's, that we're entitled to that, and now they're making us whole. Okay, so then the other public act that came out is actually an amendment to an act 1020895. And two pieces of this. The first one requires all school districts to share fund balances during the hearing. So in December, unfortunately, I'm going to be standing up here again and presenting our fund balances when you actually adopt the levy in December. But then the bigger one here I wanted to point out is this act creates a mechanism for school districts to recapture certain levy amounts otherwise available as a result of a taxing district not extending the maximum amount permitted by law. Lots and lots going on there. What that means is for those last 30 years, as a school district, the business manager in this district or any other stood up here and shared with the board, you never want to under levy because you can never get that money back. It's changed. And that's why I really wanted to make a point of this. Not necessarily to our advantage, but I needed to share this with you. What this act allows for is for school districts to under levy in a current year and recapture that in future years. So for an example, this is a bad year because it's a 5%. We can only levy 5% this year, okay? But let's say we have the philosophy, oh, our homeowners, you know, it's been a tough year on homeowners. Everything's rising. Let's only levy 3%. Okay. No longer do we lose that 2% because we can go back 3 years and recapture that money. Okay, but there's a couple problems with that. If the next 2-3 years are crazy inflation like it is, we're already at 5, we can't go more than 5. So we literally have left that 2% on the table. The likelihood of inflation being 5%, you know, for the next 3 years, who knows? But not really something I would suggest gambling on. And this is a financial example that I used from a financial advisor. Is it shows that if you forego a 5% levy in year 1, by the end of year 3, it's $1.4 million. So another issue with this is no districts have tried this yet. When I was talking to the financial advisor, he actually used the term guinea pig. He's like, I don't think anybody wants to be the guinea pig because I think we're all a little bit concerned with how this is gonna work, the county's involvement, but really, I just wanted you to know that we absolutely do not have to levy our 5% if we choose not to. I do not recommend that. We always can abate taxes at a later date if we feel it's in the best interest of our school district and our homeowners. But this act does give us a little flexibility, and perhaps maybe in the future we want to use it. But I think it's a little bit way too soon to put our money here.
When we did this, we voted not to raise taxes,
Mhm.
and basically, the idea would be that if we pulled back, it might lower taxes, but then eventually we'd have to pop it back up even higher.
Right.
So it's not really, we're not really saying no to lowering taxes for the homeowners in the area. It might be for a minute, but then the following year, we'd
That's
have to
your
bump it up higher. So instead of their bill staying consistent, I mean, I can't control Cook County, but instead of their bill staying consistent, then our portion would go up because we went down this year.
Yeah.
So it's really not,
No, that's an excellent point, because, you go back to that previous slide and there are very little fluctuations. Well, a 2% to a 5%, that is a big jump.
so it would still stay consistent as we had planned before. I mean, as a homeowner, the taxes are high, and I mean, the idea of like, oh, well, it could go down, but if it's gonna double the next year, then that doesn't really behoove anyone.
Doesn't help anybody.
There's the word again. But now, let me be very honest when I say, when we speak about taxes remaining constant, taxes are always going up.
They are.
And unfortunately, this is a 5% up, as opposed to the 1.4 and the 2 we've been experiencing. Mhm, mhm. Okay, so I always like to share the EAV, and the red is our triannual assessment. So in 2020, historically, you see a very big jump. So it was 193 million. I shared in the board report, we did not get this information till 9/12 on Thursday evening. This information usually comes out months ago. As homeowners, nobody's gotten their Cook County tax bill. Because
There's a reason for that.
everything was waiting on this. And so again, I apologize for the late hour of sharing this.
That's what
But,
I said.
But no surprise, our EAV went down by 10%, but I'm not really concerned with that because we had that big increase last year. And EAV is important because EAV has an inverse relationship to the tax rate, okay? And in simple terms, I put this here, same bills need to be paid. It's still gonna cost the district, let's say, $20 million to operate, okay? If your EAV goes up, your tax rate goes down. It's math, it's simple math. If the EAV goes down, well, then it's your EAV, EAV goes down, your tax rate goes up. But at the end of the day, the county still needs to collect that same money.
Mhm.
Make sense? Any questions on that? You want me to do that again?
Yeah, your bills don't go away.
You want me to say that again? No, okay. Okay, and so just at the bottom there, if EAV drops low, that puts our tax rate ceilings at jeopardy, and that would put money on the table. Okay, so we don't want that to happen. Okay, this was the graph from last year because I think it just screams what I'm trying to say. Since this information is not available on Forecast 5, this is not this year, this is last year, but it shows the inverse relationship with EAV. So last year, the EAV went significantly higher, but the tax rate went down. It was only like 3 point something and change. But again, we still collected the same amount of money. Okay, our total tax rate for last year was the 4.369, and this year, or in 2020, it was only 4%. That's because of that EAV spike. Okay, so when we calculate the levy, how much we're going to ask the county to give us, For 2022, we're estimating the EAV to remain constant. We're estimating new construction to be minimal. Usually we put in there about $300,000, which equates to much more market value because we're only talking EAV. We're putting in a levy of 5%, which is historically high. And we also put in a balloon levy of $50,000 to capture any new construction. So basically going back to that very first slide, we ask for a lot in case there's some variables that change that we have no control over to eventually capture everything we're entitled to. Okay, so this is what we're presenting to the board to approve the levy. Those levy amounts are by each fund. So our capped levy is $7,374,000 at a preliminary tax rate of 4.2041. Preliminary because we have no idea what 2022 EAV is going to be in for a year from now. Hopefully sooner, but we don't know. Our bonded interest that we have no control over levying. PMA, when we redid our bonds back in 2020, they do that for us. So we're proposing a total tax levy for 2022 of a tax rate of 4.5% and change. Okay, and now we always like to present the homeowner impact because if anybody asks, that's what everybody wants to know, how much of my tax is going up, right? So with the 5%, and I do have to stipulate, since the tax bills are not out, this information pertains to last year. But I went back historically and the rates on the bills don't change very much. So I felt comfortable sharing this slide. So in the worst case scenario, if you have a property value, if you can sell your home today for $275,000, that magical formula I shared, your EAV is $82,000. And that's what the county is going to assess your taxes on. Okay, the next column is your total tax from all your taxing bodies. Okay, so when you get your bill, you are going to owe $8,300. I wish this worked. You are going to owe your $8,337. That's going to be your total tax bill. Well, what we're concerned with our school district is what relates to us, and it's about 34% of your bill for your taxes relate to Chicago Ridge. So the portion estimated for Chicago Ridge is $2,900. So your increase just from our municipality doing our taxes is going to be $145. So, in a nutshell, I'm assuming that the high school, the police, everybody's going to be most likely levying
Doing the same
5%.
thing.
So if you have an $8,000 tax bill and you're a homeowner in Chicago Ridge, 5% is going to be a $400 increase. I can't say that, I can only share what we're levying, but I would have to assume that.
I'm sure.
Mhm, mhm. And this example does include the homeowner's exemption. Okay, so really just in summary, we're asking the board to approve the tentative levy at 5% over last year's extension plus new property. We do understand that this levy is preceded by historic period of low inflation, so this is a big ask. We also, as a school districts, are experiencing labor shortages and rising labor costs and overall operating costs due to supply chain costs, supply and demand, and basically everything it touches is just costing more money. Our paper order was almost double this year. So we actually do, historically, we always do a public hearing. It's called our truth in taxation. And by law, if you levy more than 5%, you have to have this hearing. Historically, we do, and we do. We were very transparent. It will be in the newspaper. Even when we, for the last 30 years, have been under the 5%. So we will advertise in the newspaper. Now, because we have to, because our percentage is above 5%, because we have that little bit of new property and, the balloon levy. So we will have our hearing on the 13th, which the board will be asked to, approve. Then we will disclose our fund balances, and then we just have to file with the clerk by December. I know it's a lot of information. I really try to simplify it. Does anybody have any questions? Or if anyone wants to meet with me after to go through it again, I know I do this once a year and I have to start over. So, I'd be really happy to help anyone if they need anything. Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. I still.
Thank you.
All right, Nancy, we are,
Sorry, I'm not-
oh, you're not done yet? All right, I'm gonna mute myself.
Okay.
And I'm
Okay, and these, just two real quick issues. Last year, they did not, offer the property tax relief grant. They did bring it back for this year. We will not get it. We are preliminary on the list, 253 out of 851. And what this grant does is it gives our homeowners a bit of tax relief, and then the state reimburses us. There's always a slight cash flow difference. We don't get 100% back, but if we were ever within that realm of the first $50 million, we would do it. And so even though these are preliminary, we're not going to get it. It's literally a piece of paper and a signature. And I suggest we apply for the grant. Okay, and then my final other, I received a call from our Worth Township treasurer, and they pay our bonds, and our bond payment is due December 1st. And with the tax bills not coming out, we are actually going to be short in our debt service fund by about $171,000. And he, as a representative of all the Worth Townships, talked with Chapman and Cutler, who are kind of like the experts in bonds. They're the firm, along with PMA, that helped us sell our bonds back in 2020. And they gave a couple options of what we could do. We could do nothing, because by the end of December, possibly January or even sooner, that money will be collected the minute these tax bills go out. We could do a loan from working cash, which quite honestly, he made it sound was a lot of formalities and a lot of paperwork for something that is going to just fix itself. But he did recommend that I just disclose this information to the board, and I recommend we let it roll, and by January we should be back in the black. No, excellent question. No, because we actually carry a negative balance in our O&M, because we just can't get enough money in our O&M. And so I asked that if we're ever in jeopardy of getting a penalty, and he assured us no. Because what we do at the end of the year, we move that O&M money from the ed fund into there. But it's not a material, but we just did want to disclose
I would
that.
imagine every school district is.
Yes.
the whole state.
Yeah.
And other districts are doing tax anticipation warrants. They're robbing Peter to pay Paul, fortunately. And I think we had discussed this with the board a couple months ago. Our fund balances are okay to get us through. I just didn't look carefully into the bond specifically account.
I mean, the auditor said most schools are required to have 2 months of work in cash. There's a
Mhm.
lot of schools out there that are
Yeah.
in that.
And depending on their property taxes, that's huge. That's a delay. That money is usually in the bank by September. That is all I have.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
potential board action to approve tentative 2022 property tax levy. We need to motion on this, right?
Mhm.
Motion
Yeah, 8 or 9.
9.1.
No.
Mhm.
I'll make the motion.
Need a second.
I'll second.
Ms. Joy,
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
Mrs. Grove, Mrs. Abuda,
Aye.
and Mrs. Aug.
Aye. 9.2, potential board action to accept FY 22 draft of the audited financial statements as prepared by RSM.
I'll make the motion.
Second. Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye.
Mrs. Abuda,
Aye.
Ms. Joy,
Aye.
Mrs. Grove, and Mrs. Salzer.
Aye. Potential board action to authorize and direct administration to prepare and submit a timely application to the Illinois State Board of Education for property tax relief grant fiscal 2023. Motion.
I'll make motion.
No.
Ms.
Nice.
Grove, aye. Ms. Joy,
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
Mrs. Abuda,
Aye.
Mrs. Salzer.
Aye. Potential board action to approve updates to student parent handbook involving student absence insurance. Motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Ms. Joy,
Aye.
Mrs. Abuda,
Aye.
Mrs. Grove, Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye.
And Mrs. Salzer.
Aye. Potential board action to award base bid 1, Bridge Lawn Construction Solutions of Illinois, Inc., amount of $3,738,723.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Mrs. Abuda,
Aye.
Mrs. Grove, Ms. Joy,
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye.
And Mrs. Salzer.
Aye. Potential board action toward base bid 2, and alternates as presented to for the Ridge Central Finley Construction Solutions of Illinois. The amount is $4,462,977.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
And that includes what we talked
Correct,
about.
yep.
Mrs. Abuda,
Aye.
Ms. Joy,
Aye.
Mrs. Grove, Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye.
And Mrs. Salzer.
Aye. Megan, you have anything else to say?
No.
Okay, President Prerogative, just thanks guys for being here and doing what we do. And I'm just thanking you for being here too, and doing this. There's more people that understand that. Adjourn to closed session.
Yes, for the discussion of the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body to determine its validity as defined in the Open Meetings Act, Section 2C1, the discussion of collective negotiated matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. In the discussion of minutes of prior meetings lawfully closed under the Open Meetings Act as defined in Section 2C21 for the purpose of review, approval, or release of such minutes. We will not discuss security measures, student discipline, or any litigation during this meeting.
8:05.
You know,
We need a motion.
I'll make a motion to go into closed session.
I'll second.
Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
Mrs. Grove, Mrs. Abuda,
Aye.
Ms. Joy,
Aye.
Mrs. Salzer.
Aye.